Well, there's the big bright moon. Don't get too much moonshine. I'm Marquette. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Stay Curious. We're staying star curious today, actually moon curious with a lot of lunacy that I've compiled things that I love about the moon because the moon is my favorite four-letter word, and we've been celebrating all last week Apollo 11 55th anniversary. So why not get a little bit more moonshine up there on our astronomy segment of Stay Curious Backyard Astronomy? All kinds of things we're going to talk about here, and thank you all for being with us today. And let me kick up there our Stay Star Curious logo there. And the moon is something that I've loved all my life. I have photographed thousands of images of it since a little boy. Once I got a telescope like everybody else, I wanted to photograph it. And so there's just a common snapshot now that you can take with a digital camera of the southern hemisphere of the moon there. So we're going to be inspired by a lot of things today that are lunatics love, all about the moon. A photograph I took of President Kennedy out the Apollo monument, a photo I particularly like because of the wonderful sky there. But this is so accurate of President Kennedy that his daughter Caroline wanted to buy a copy of it, but they'd already broke the mold. So, but just to inspire that, yes, we did it, President Kennedy, before the end of the decade, 55 years ago on July 20th, 1969. And then we doubled down in November with Apollo 12 and landed on the moon. I was first inspired by the moon, no doubt, by watching this man, Walt Disney. I think he came on at 7 o'clock at night on Sundays, and then Ed Sullivan's show would be afterwards, after the Wide World of Disney. So definitely something that I was influenced by, seeing Werner von Braun talk about going to the moon and Mars, and just so inspired by the Walt Disney Sunday evening program, anything that was on there about science or space, I completely ate up. And the moon is something that is so fun to follow across our sky. To speak like an astronomer, you know how many days moon it is. This is about a 2-day-old moon. Excuse me. 0-day moon is new moon, and here's a friend of mine who passed away, Farrell Snyder, silhouetted against the moon there. The moon's phases are known to all mankind, of course, from first quarter to last quarter, and the phases of full and new in between. So to speak like an amateur astronomer, how many days old is the moon? Well, the moon is about 16 days old. All right, today, July 22nd, 16 or 17 days old. That puts it between full moon and the gibbous phase at 19 days. So the moon will be rising after sunset. About 50 minutes later every night is when the moon rises. And we love watching it go above the ocean around here. Something I'm going to show you a picture of in a little bit. A lucky picture I caught. But the moon phases are given how many days old it is, from 0 at new moon to 29, right to that thin crescent before it goes to new moon. Of course, one of my favorite photos showing the moon in the palm trees here. To photograph the moon is kind of touchy. Notice in my photographs, you can always see the seas, the dark areas, all right? A lot of photographers just let it go out of overexposure, so it looks like a flashlight in the sky. That's not as appeasing. Balancing that in a photography camera setting is very challenging, and something that you need to work on. Moon maps are very cool to have. After all, there's over 30,000 features named on just the front side of the moon. Of course, there's no dark side of the moon. It's the back side of the moon, as evidence here. The side that we see on the left with the Maria, the seas that are so prominent, where we landed, Mare Serenity, right across from the oval on the upper right, which is Mare Chrism. But this is the back side of the moon behind me. Wow, there's not the typical seas of lava like you see on the front side. It's heavily cratered. What happened? Well, the Earth's gravity basically froze the moon, so it keeps its constant face towards us. If you would watch above the Earth, it would go around once every 28 days. But most moons around all the planets are frozen like that. There are more than 640 moons in the solar system. Most of them keep that one side towards their parent body all the time. And there are some of the major moons of the solar system. Ganymede is actually larger than the planet Mercury. Titan is almost the size of Mercury, and Triton also. Ganymede is Jupiter, Titan is on Saturn, and Triton is a moon of Neptune. So, of all the photos I've taken of the moon over time, I like this one because I particularly remember driving down the road in Tennessee where I took this, seeing the moon as I saw a couple of these power line towers, and I thought, oh wow, look, the moon's right there in the middle of it. And you know what? I did a U-turn and got off the side of the road to photograph this. A lot of you photographers out there know that don't pass up an opportunity to take a photo. You'll probably never see it again. I would have never ever seen the moon juxtaposed like this against the electric tower, power line tower there. And again, I think I got a picture that speaks to me, so to speak. Of course, the moon spoke to the Native Americans here on Earth and all cultures around the world as they denoted full moon phases. They gave them names. The full moon was so important to cultures all over the world, particularly Native Americans, because they could get extra light at night when the moon was out and the sky was clear, so they could work longer in the fields, planting, harvesting, or hunting. And the moon were given different names, like the moon of January, the full wolf moon, the full snow moon of February. This is the full buck moon, is the one that happens in July, because the bucks are mating. And so they're real restless, and you see them, the males fighting and clashing their antlers together and that sort of stuff. Then in August, it's the full sturgeon moon, because of the sturgeon in the waterways, particularly up in the Wisconsin, Minnesota area, that sort of thing. So some are very logical, like the full corn moon, full hunter's moon, harvest moon, October, November. The harvest moon of October is followed by the hunter's moon when all the leaves are down and you can hunt. And then the beaver moon of November is because the activity of beavers being so noticeable to native cultures there. So that's from the almanac. Ring around the moon is something caused by atmospheric crystals. And it's always the same size ring around the moon, 22 degrees from the ones in radius. So it's 45 degrees across, given the half a degree of the moon there. So these are high alto cirrus clouds. Makes a beautiful ring around the moon. And also the sun. And Native Americans would count how many stars you saw in the middle is how many days till it was going to rain or something significant happen. Well, of course, the moon lore. Can't talk about the moon without the hundreds of moon songs out there. A couple of my favorite, Moon Shadow by Cat Stevens. Definitely one of my favorite ones. On a 45, we've got doing our board today is intern Logan Cope of Eastern Florida State College. Do you even know what that is, Logan? He's shaking his head, Marty. Marty Winkel here is looking over our intern's shoulder. He doesn't know what that is. We're going to have to degrade him today. That is a phonographic record that you laid a needle on, a 45, went 45 revolutions per minute on there. And you get, vinyls. It's called vinyl. Yes, sir, it's called vinyl. Also dig moon pies, all right? I like moon pies. I like the chocolate kind. Moon pies are the home, and their home is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And a favorite everywhere. And in today's economy, I'm waiting for them to get about the size of a quarter, Marty. Now, is there all the candy you like and candy bars and so forth, they're raising the price and making them smaller. Midnight moonshine. Now, that's the kind of moonshine, I don't like that moonshine per se, but regular moonshine, moonlight, I do like that. It's the kind you can't get. But interesting how in the alcoholic world, moonshine has really gotten a big following of how they proof it. But oh, yeah, 30 years in Appalachia, I've certainly seen my share of real moonshine from the hollers of Tennessee and Kentucky. Another song that I love, Van Morrison's Moon Dance. And there's Van Morrison. What a classic song. What a fabulous night for a moon dance. Just one of the top moon songs up there with Moon Shadow, of course, up there. So we look at the moon, big and bright, photo I took. You got to put densities into the light areas. You photographers out there, if you take that Photoshop and just slide the highlight bar all the way to the left, you're not going to believe how these rayed craters like Tycho, you see the rays coming out of that crater on the bottom? That's the crater named Tycho. And there's one about in the middle of the moon left. That's Copernicus. Well, I've seen for years, not the man in the moon, but I see the woman in the moon. But other cultures see the rabbit in the moon, a bison, lots of rabbits, maybe an ant in the moon. All right. All kinds of things made up in the moon with the dark areas and light areas. Excuse me there. And I see a woman in the moon. Profile of a lady, her hair in a bun. Tycho's a bright crater at the bottom there. All right. She got ruby lips. Profile of a woman in the moon. Go out and see it tonight. As the moon will be rising later and later, it's about 50 minutes later every night, probably rising close to 9:30, 10 o'clock tonight. So there's your woman in the moon. In the blue moon. Of course, I put a filter on the blue moon because the blue moon's never blue like that. But once in a blue moon is an expression that we all say a lot. What does that mean? Well, once in a blue moon, that means once in a very long time, okay? So a blue moon is, in astronomy talk, 2 full moons in the same month. Now, how can you have 2 full moons in the same month? Well, the lunar day, or its revolution around the Earth, is 29 days, all right? So in a 31-day month, you can have the full moon happen on the 2nd of the month and then on the 31st or the 30th. 2 full moons. That's truly once in a blue moon. So, and by the way, hi Cliff Watson, got my ARS hat on there, all right, which stands for the Australia Research and Science Exploration. All right, that is Australia's NASA. It's called ARS. All right, thank you, Cliff, for the hat. All kinds of moons, movies that you can talk about, see on Roku. I just watched this one recently. I think it's on Tubi is the one I was watching. Sorry for yawning so much. Don't know what's going on there, but that is a worker selenite that lived inside the moon on H.G. Wells's classic First Men in the Moon in 1964. One of my favorite moon creatures, if you will. The moon is 1/4 of the size of the Earth, all right? We are, in a sense, dual planets, a lot like Pluto and its moon Karan in these actual ratios shown here. If the Earth was that size, the moon is that size, Pluto is a lot smaller than our moon. We're about 8,000 miles across the Earth. The moon's a little over 2,000. Pluto's about 1,500, and its moon Karan is 750 miles across. But like our Earth-Moon system, the orbital center is inside of the Earth's crust, as the moon's just 250,000 miles away, just like Karan and Pluto are. Here are just a sampling of vehicles that have landed on the moon or crashed in the moon. All right, green are the Luna spacecraft of the Soviet Union and Russia. You see our yellow 6 landings of the Apollo era. And Surveyor in blue, unmanned spacecraft. and a whole bunch of others that have just crashed in, like our lunar orbiters, the lunar orbiters, and the Ranger spacecraft. I figured up one time, you're not going to believe the tonnage that man's put on the moon is something like 500,000 tons has been deposited on the moon. I'll whip that fact on you another day. Here's all the 12 men that walked on the moon. Harrison Schmitt next to me is 88 years old. Second from the left on the bottom is Charlie Duke. Charlie's going to be 88 years old. Got his autograph on a moon globe over here I might reach up and grab. Then you got Buzz Aldrin's 95. And top left, the second one on the left, and then third one from the right in the middle, that is Scott. Yeah, David Scott. So, of course, you got Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin. Then the third man on the moon with Apollo 12 is Pete Conrad with Al Bean. Then you have Al Shepard and Edgar Mitchell. And then in the middle there, still alive, David Scott, and passed away is Jim Irwin. Then you got John Young in the bottom with Charlie Duke. And, of course, Gene Cernan and Harrison Jack Schmitt. I love looking at the movies of the moon. One of my favorite things on YouTube. Also like looking at photographs that you can even crop and enhance for yourself on Flickr, Apollo Flickr Archives. Love looking at, this is Apollo 15, David Scott looking at Jim Irwin on the rover there. Perfectly see Jim on there. That'd make a great drawing or photograph. Yes, NASA has been back at the moon. Okay. Be 2 years in November with the Artemis 1 launch. This is the uncrewed Artemis 1 orbiting the moon. Didn't orbit the moon, actually, just flew by it. Those are the solar panels on the left that has a GoPro on. And I think it's so cool you can see between the window there, the light inside. And this is that trajectory that Orion took, all right? And again, Orion 2 is going to be crewed, and they're going to do the same thing. Just fly behind the moon about 3,000 miles above the surface. And again, watching the movies of the moon, I love watching the 15, 16, and 17 as they had the rovers on there that gave you a lift off. All of that Kapton foil and Mylar flying away there as over 200 pyrotechnics and connections are severed in 1/10 of a second to successfully lift off the moon. Moon rocks, 950 pounds of moon rocks brought back. And all the astronauts say they smelled like spent gunpowder or a moist fireplace has been burned. And maybe had some rain come down the chute to it there. So I've had my privilege to see all kinds of moon rocks in captivity. I believe this one's the one at the Cosmosphere. That could be the one at the Neil Armstrong Museum, but I think that one's in the Cosmosphere. That's a pretty good-sized moon rock there at the Cosmosphere in Kansas City. They're all displayed like this, of course, made so nobody can steal them. Except me. There I am, Paul Lewis, a friend of mine at the University of Tennessee, always had this in his pocket. This is an Apollo 16 moon rock in a plastic case. White rock there, that's 16, it was chiseled off a big white rock that John Young found on the moon there. And I would always say, Paul, you have it with you? He goes, why? You've held it all the time. I said, I always want to hold it when I see you there. So, yep, I actually did give it back to him there. So now some fancy pictures of the moon to end this little lunatic edition of Stay Curious. Moonrise over the Atlantic Ocean. I was lucky to have my camera photographing it coming up over the ocean in a mirage situation there. Very cool to get a mirage going on there. And Logan, we got some people watching today. I didn't bring my smart tablet to tell us there, but we got Gary Gerald watching today and Tom Celentano. Gary said he's going to be around Friday in town. Marty's going to stop by and see us. Hope he's got his wife Donnie with him. Bill Whiting's watching today. Steve Jokums getting a little lunacy with me there. Dave Stangy's watching up in Michigan. Doug Forrest. And I appreciated, Doug, I shared your artwork over this weekend. His magnificent Apollo tribute with the Apollo 1 guys in the background. Mitchell is watching on Manned Space, and he had a big weekend I'll be sharing with you on Facebook at San Diego. Tommy Usiak's watching. Jim Schultz, thank you for watching, Jim. And Carlton Bailey, another lunatic like me that loves shooting the moon up there. So, a couple other pictures. Another famous photo of mine, one of my favorite things to do years ago, go to Bristol Motor Speedway as a credentialed photographer, stand up on the roof and watch the night race. They had 150,000 people there at one time. Now they're lucky to get 50,000. But there's the moonrise over the South Holston Mountains of Appalachia. On the other side of that mountain is Asheville, North Carolina, or Weaverville, really, Marty, where Marty's son lives there. But yes, I know the moon looks like a flashlight. Where's the dark areas? Well, I had to expose it for the night race there at the bottom. You can just see the NASCAR blur of the half-mile oval there in Bristol, Tennessee. And my hometown of Findlay, Ohio, Hancock County, and that's John Hancock on our courthouse. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, folks. Appropriate way to end our Stay Curious program here. I did not take this photograph, but a lot of photographers go to great lengths to get a wonderful scene like this with people in it. That moon illusion is so cool when it looks so gigantic, though you can always cover it up with your little finger, outstretched arm. It's just a half a degree across. So, but there is a photo I took, the moon looking big and gigantic over the Radisson Hotel there on Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach actually area there. So go out and get you some moonshine this week. But as the moon rises 50 minutes later each day, each night, that leaves our nighttime backyard stargazing free of the moonlight that can wipe out the faint fuzzy galaxies, nebula, and so forth that we backyard astronomers like to see. So hope that you enjoyed a little bit of lunacy here on Stay Curious. Thank you all for watching today. We were late today because we were interviewing two astronauts that were going to play back there. We had Roger Crouch and Winston Scott in our studio. So you're going to be looking forward to an interview with them. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about some shuttles of the month of July and some current events, all right? We might get the interview together that we did today with Roger Crouch and Winston Scott, but not going to promise that. Might be later in the week as we have to do some editing of that. So, Logan, everything okay on our Streamlabs production there? Marty's nodding that he's okay there, so he's nodding out because I'm so boring. All right, everybody. We hope that you enjoyed more lunar. I'm always going to talk about the moon. I'm always going to talk about the shuttle. And I'm always going to talk about the lunar landings. Guess what? We've got another lunar landing in July. July 30th is the landing of Apollo 15 on the moon's surface. So 11 is followed 3 years later by 15 in the month of July. So thank you all for watching today. Hope that you can come into our museum because I'm Marquette and I can't wait to see you to bridge the space between us.